The Revenant, A Novel of Revenge, is a novel by Michael Punk based on a real story and published in 2002, after 4 years of writing. It would be simplistic to describe the author as a mere writer, since, among other things, he was the deputy US trade representative and the US ambassador to the World Trade Organization in Geneva, while currently he is the vice president of public policy for Amazon Web Services. He was born in the United States in 1964 and spent his childhood in nature doing activities like fishing and hunting. It is easier to understand his interest in the story of Hugh Glass with such a background. In August 1822, Hugh Glass, an American hunter and explorer, sets off on an expedition to Missouri, when, momentarily estranged from his companions, comes face to face with a grizzly. The fight is fatal for the bear, but the injuries of the hunter seem to leave him with no hope, which is why two other hunters, Bridger and Fitzgerald, are assigned to nurse him to death. Fitzgerald, who is interested only in money and certain that their companion will soon be dead, tricks Bridger into abandoning him. This is precisely the moment when Glass promises himself that he will take revenge on the two traitors. For 4 months he fights between life and death, and fate has it that even the Indians who inhabit those deserted lands, considered his enemies, help him by treating his wounds. Finally, on New Year's Eve, Hugh reunites with his former comrades, ready to take revenge. Bridger is the first to suffer the fury of Glass, who, however, realizes that his young companion had also been deceived, and forgives him. The other, Fitzgerald, has already abandoned the group, and is alone in the Missouri Valley. Hugh, blinded by revenge, sets off to find him and confront him. The work by Punk inspired the making of The Revenant, a 2015 film by Alejandro González Iñárritu, based in part on the novel, which is why there are differences throughout the narrative, some of which totally change its emotional impact. The film adaptation immediately opens with a substantial discrepancy, the presence of Glass's son in the expedition, a presence that is never mentioned in the book, although Punk reconstructs, albeit briefly, the private lives of the protagonists. It is Iñárritu who, in the film adaptation, decides to use the flashback technique to narrate Hook's hypothetical recent past and his relationship with an Indian woman and their son, a deliberate addition to reinforce Glass's desire for revenge and to add that touch of love, in this case also paternal, that cannot be lacking in films. Even Glass's entire journey is approached differently in the film. The hunter, in fact, seems to be alone, constantly struggling with what happens to him along the way. Obviously, this choice is also dictated by the cinematic need to make the character as heroic as possible. But in the book, Hugh has the luck of always finding someone to help him or get him out of uncomfortable situations. However, it is in the ending that can be found the main difference between the two works. The confrontation between Glass and Fitzgerald takes place in both cases, but it is, let's say, slightly different. What can be said, without revealing too much, is that only one of the two follows the supposedly real events. Once again, the cinematic choice is dictated by the need to generate a certain kind of pathos in the public. The very end of the story, but in general the whole journey taken by the hunter, reveals the central theme of the work, the thirst for revenge. A revenge that drives a man already dead to get up and fight against everything and everyone. A revenge that, despite the differences in both works, invites us to reflect on the actual gratification derived from it. Although opinions may widely differ, what is undoubtedly clear is that the thirst for revenge allows people to do unthinkable things, such as becoming a revenant. It is therefore the title of the work that immediately tells us what the other fundamental theme of the story is: the ability to know how to get back up after any fall and start again without ever giving up. A theme treated in thousands of works, but which in this one has reached its climax, as it shows how human beings are truly able to overcome any kind of obstacle placed in front of them, even death. The work also proves to be totally current, as it addresses one of the key problems of our society: racism. We are all aware of the history of colonialism, and we know what kind of relations there were between the Native Americans and the colonizers. However, in the book, and even more so in the film, it is evident the status of superiority that the colonizers imposed on the Indian tribes, whose members were treated as slaves, were deprived of their territories, and the women used for sexual purposes. Colonialism is a terrible stain on human history, and, although it is now over, or rather transformed, it is a pity that the same cannot be said of racism. Fortunately, at least in the film, there is room for vengeance, not only for Glass, but also for the Indian tribes. Although Punk's novel was not considered a success at the time of its release in 2002, after the 2015 film adaptation, its sales skyrocketed and made it a bestseller. The work made it possible to produce a film that, among other awards, won 3 Oscars and 3 Golden Globes. Not bad at all. However, it must be remembered that due to his job positions, Punk was never able to advertise his book, which is why success only came later. Furthermore, witnesses claim that, in order to write, Punk went to work at 5 a.m., 3 hours before the start of his shift, and that he contracted pneumonia at least 4 times during the process. All this, let us remember, knowing that he could not promote the book. It is therefore right that it is a character like Punk to tell the story of a revenant like Glass. Honestly, I knew the film, but I had never seen it, so I was not sure what it was about and did not know that there was a book about it. Nevertheless, as a lover of the genre and intrigued even more by the truthfulness of the story, I decided to get into it, starting with the book itself. After the first reading, I had already realized that I was faced with a work that fully transports the reader into the story. The constant historical references, description of places, and the accurate narration of the protagonist's suffering allow anyone reading to be there, in the Missouri Valley, fighting for survival. It was difficult for me to think that the film could even hold a candle to it. I have never been so wrong. Although with differences, the film is as capable as the novel of captivating the public and transporting it into the scene. DiCaprio's performance is extraordinary, so much so that he won an Oscar, and best renders the suffering endured by Glass in his struggle for life. Yet, it is the setting that impressed me the most. The scenes in the wilderness, shot mainly in Canada, are breathtaking and reveal healthy paradises that fit perfectly with the protagonist's struggle for survival, as they accentuate the difficulty. The conflict between Glass and death and his return to life show us that there is nothing that cannot be overcome, and, above all, make us reflect on the meaning of revenge, leaving us with a question: is it worth it?
You came all this way just for your revenge, huh? Will you enjoy it, class? 'Cause there ain't nothing gonna bring your boy back.